Hello and good evening. Tonight, as you can tell, we're doing something a little bit different. I decided that I was going to take some time out of my Tuesday evenings to dedicate specifically to developing my craft of writing. Not just my craft, but my skill at it, whatever. A couple years ago, I kickstarted a project called the Story Engine. It is a deck of cards that you can use to help you create story prompts. What I hope to do tonight, as well as do a little bit of writing, is I hope to demonstrate sort of how the Story Engine works for simple prompts. In a moment, we're going to have the Story Engine deck on screen so I can show what that looks like. For later episodes, I'm hoping to discuss a little bit about my writing philosophy, some of the stuff that I've learned. I am by no means an expert writer. I like to write in my free time. I'm not professional in any way, shape, or form. I don't have a degree in writing. I just read books. I've taken classes. And I hope that together you and I can come up with some interesting stuff. I do definitely want to see what you've come up with, so please shoot me messages, send me links to your stories in the Discord. That's totally fine. Anything we write here on the Alpaca Lunch Freewrite is just generally considered to be shitty first drafts. That is a term coined by Anne Lamott, who wrote a book called Bird by Bird. Love that book. It's an excellent book on writing. It talks about basically bird by bird is a metaphor for step by step. Just taking writing one step at a time. Got to put a word on paper to get a second word, but oftentimes the blank screen, just like the one you can see here, is the most intimidating. And that is really where stuff like the Story Engine comes in to help you put something down on the screen. Or in a notebook if you're writing by hand, or if you're writing poetry by hand, or drawing on a page, or doing digital artwork or whatever. Blank canvas is the hardest to work with. So the Story Engine put something on your canvas for you to start working with. Now there is a short rule book that came with the box that tells you how to read the cards, gives you different instructions for how to generate different scenarios. If you've already got a character in mind, if you've already got a setting in mind, you can lock some of those options in. We'll get into those on later dates. Tonight we are just going to look at the deck itself, or rather we're going to do a simple prompt. As you can see, there are kind of 5 decks of cards that make up the Story Engine, and these are agent cards, anchor cards, aspect cards, and conflict cards. And what these do, some of them seem a little bit self-explanatory. I'm actually going to go ahead and start removing these decks. Because we're going to have some cards out, and sort of one of each, because like I said, we're doing just a simple prompt today. And putting these all together is going to help us create our story prompt. Ooh. Come here. If you are not watching live, that's totally fine. Feel free to use this prompt if you like it. Feel free to make up your own prompt if you don't like the one that we draw. I do have some background music on. This is coming from a YouTube player right now. This is Chill Out Radio 24/7 chill hop music. It is supposedly copyright free. It's just there to sort of set the background for our little writing. So when we're creating a prompt with the story engine, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with an agent. This is a character. So when we draw, we're going to place it face down. And then whatever's at the bottom is what we're looking at. So you can see we have a wanderer down here. The next thing you need after that is you're going to need an engine card. The engines are what moves the story. All of the cards have different words on the different edges, and whatever is pointing down towards you, as in whatever's most legible, is what you go with. If you like one of the ones on the other edge, rotate your card. Make it work for you. So this is a wanderer who wants to liberate something. So now we need an anchor for them to liberate. So we're going to draw an anchor card. And let's have them liberate a church. So we've got 3 cards here. This one's a little bit hard to read, but that does say a church. So we have a wanderer who wants to liberate a church. And now we need a conflict card to really make this interesting. What's stopping this character from liberating a church? The last time they tried, it ended in humiliation. Now you may notice that we had 5 decks up there to start with. We've only drawn 4 cards. So they have these aspect cards, and you can draw kind of as many as you want to modify things. We're going to do the simple prompt, like I said, which is just drawing 1 aspect card. We've got 4 aspects on this card. We're just going to put one down. What we've got is irreplaceable is our word that's down. So let's apply that to church, because I think that makes the most sense there. So now we have a wanderer who wants to liberate an irreplaceable church, but the last time they tried, it ended in humiliation. That's our story prompt for the moment. You can choose to use this, you can choose not to use this. I think that's a pretty interesting one. Especially because a wanderer, really, you know, why do they have a connection to this church? What makes this church so irreplaceable? You know? Take as much or as little time as you need to write. Don't worry about fonts, don't worry about font size, typeface to begin with. Just keep everything super simple, left justified, whatever the default paragraphs are, or whatever you need to set up your canvas. And let's just vibe for a little bit. Let's think about what the story is, where we're gonna start it. And you can use this prompt again. You can make your own, and you know, whatever you come up with, it's gonna be different from what I come up with. I hope. I mean, you could see my word processor, so ostensibly you could just rip off whatever it is that I'm writing. But you know, I hope you don't. Now keep in mind, I also have an eye on the Steam chat, so if you have questions or suggestions, I am open to hearing those if you are live with me. If not, if you want to leave a comment watching this video in retrospect, it's totally legit. I need a good name. Come up with a name here. You saying something?
I was scratching the cat and I was being cute at it. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I know one of my bad habits when I'm writing is that I do a lot of self-editing. I will reread my sentences as I write them and decide that that's not how I want it to sound. This is a bad habit. It's a bad habit because it causes you to stop and second guess yourself a lot when you're really trying to get out that shitty first draft. Again, a lot of what we're going to be doing here in our creative writing sessions is putting out these shitty first drafts. So just be okay with them not being your best content. Be okay with the incorrect word choice or misspelling. It's really not what we're focusing on. It's really not super relevant to the task of writing. I've got here a couple of paragraphs. They're pretty hard to see. I didn't indent them, which I could totally do at this point. They're certainly not done for word choice. They're certainly not concise. I'm not worried about it, and I'm not done yet. We haven't gotten to any humiliation, and there have been no, there have been no revelations about Hilda's past. We don't know who Cad Willis is or why he's a bad guy, if he's a bad guy. We just know that Hilda doesn't want to see him, and we don't know why this church needs liberation, and how it is that Hilda, as a wanderer, can provide that liberation. And that some of that's because I haven't figured that out yet, which is also totally okay. There's no rush, and sometimes maybe what you want to do is just write some notes. I tend to do two styles of writing. The terms that I'm going to use came from NaNoWriMo. They tend to classify three types of writers, which are planners, pantsers, and plantsers. A planner decides out how their story's going to go in advance, figuring out this and that and the other, and then sits down and writes in segments. I think that's a really neat way of writing. If you can get that done, that's a really efficient way to do it, because you can simply say, I've written this much of a book or a story or whatever it is you're writing, and I have this much left. It's very efficient that way, especially for doing stuff that's more professional. If you are filthy casual like me, you might do some pantsing like this. Pantsing comes from the term seat of your pants, doing something by the seat of your pants. Plantsers is a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. When I'm serious about something that I'm writing, I definitely do plantsing, because I find that the way that my mind works is I will get hit by a sudden inspiration for something, and I'm like, aha, I want to write this right now, and I will write down a scene, and I may not accomplish everything I want except for writing down the scene in my head, and then I'll have a few other ideas that sort of spin off of that, so I'll make a few notes, and I will come back to those later on. And as I'm piecing together the larger narrative with the planning aspect of my plantsing, I will see whether the scene that I wrote fits in with a little bit of editing, because nothing I write just out of my head is going to fit into a greater narrative without some editing, or if that scene was really just inspiration for tone, and both are fine. There's no such thing as wasted writing. Anything that you write here might play out for something else, and that's really good and really important, whether you're writing for yourself or your friends, whether you're writing for an RPG, whether you're writing a short story or a poem or whatever it is that you write. What's most important is that you write. For a lot of people, writing is their only voice, and that can be really important. And even if your voice isn't very loud or eloquent, that doesn't mean that you can't make it louder and make it more eloquent later. And a lot of that has to do with editing, which is a whole different skill, and not something that should generally be attempted by oneself. The reason I say this is because when you edit for yourself, not to get too generalized about it, in the same way that we divided up, planners, pantsers, and plantsers, there tends to be people who are overly critical or underwhelmingly undercritical of their work. I've met both. The problem with being overcritical is that you might take out too much stuff or scrap your project altogether, which is usually what I do. I am an overcritical self-editor. On the other hand, you tend to, in writing, get a lot of people who write their shitty first draft and look at it and say, this is good. This is the New Testament. The brand new testament of the Bible. We got the Old Testament and the New Testament and the Book of Mormon and this is going to be the word, and don't do that. I also discourage you from setting out to write a series. That might work well for planners. But if you are just starting writing and you are not published, like I am, then planning on a series is a lot, especially if you hope to get it published. It's better if you are writing your story and you get to your climax and your resolution and you realize, I have more to this story. There's more with these characters. There's more that I have to say. And you might write an epilogue. And you might realize that your epilogue is turning into its own story. That's when you cut it off and say, okay, I need to make a sequel. And rinse and repeat. If you're a new writer, I recommend doing it this way. If you've written books, poems, whatever, do what feels right. A lot of writing is about understanding structure and how to apply it on various different scales. And that's where that's why I think plantsing works best for me, is because I can sort of plan out that macro scale and then move in and fill in some details and then zoom out back to that macro scale and say, okay, do those details still look good when I zoom out? And generally speaking, the answer is no. Of course, that's why you need an editor, so you see that there's a process to this. If I'm saying things you already know, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to talk down or be a subject matter expert. I do just want to share some of the things that I have learned about the process of writing. Really like the name Cad because it's a good villain name, because it already sort of means like idiot or asshole. What a cad. So you can already tell Hierophant Cad Willis is a bad guy because he's a cad. Beard. feel like I'm really playing up this building. I mean, I am. It's irreplaceable. I think we're doing pretty well. How's your project going? Hopefully good. Anything I'm writing is not a metric, so hopefully you've written something that's satisfactory. Not quite done yet. Still got about 12 minutes left, but I think we're doing okay. Sometimes it's important to just take a breath and think about what you're writing. It's not all bursts of inspiration, and sometimes it's just putting one word next to another. name generator, huh? I think that's about where I'm going to call that one right there. So, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for writing, for being a part of the creative process. I hope very much that I can see some of what you wrote as well, even if it's not your greatest stuff. I'd love to see it, offer my own feedback, enjoy it, or maybe I'll hate it, who knows. But it's important to do your writing. It's important to participate in that way. It's important to get out and do it, and I've definitely been lackadaisical, and I think this is something that I can do to sort of change that. So definitely try to get yourself to a point where you're writing regularly. I'm going to be back here next Tuesday doing this exact same thing, and I encourage you to join me. I can't say for sure if we'll be doing another story engine prompt. Probably we will. I thought that that was pretty good. I got a fair amount written. Got like 2 whole pages just about, which is not a bad amount of writing in 1 hour. It's a very short amount of time to spend just dedicated to practicing. Thank you again for joining me. If you forgot to eat, don't worry. I'll pack a lunch for you.